Joe Root piles on the records, England pile on the misery, and the questions pile on for Team India as Day 3 at Old Trafford belongs solely to England. Sanjay Manjrekar joins us on ESPN Cricinfo Matchday. Sanjay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Been a while since we've seen an Indian Test match day where they've looked as hapless.
And, the starting point has to be of understanding. Just imagine the kind of squad that India have. And yes, they batted brilliantly through the series, but on a pitch where they had to get 500 runs batting first, they didn't quite have the big hundreds or a double hundred. So fell short by a few runs. And bowling wise as well. Now, English bowlers bowled on a much more helpful pitch and overcast conditions. So it was against the odds. And some selection calls will be questioned, some bowling changes will be questioned, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But it's something that I can't straight away be scathing with the way India have bowled or where India stand now in this test.
All right, I'll allow you to stew over those thoughts because there are questions to be asked. But let's start by lauding the greatness that we saw. And Joe Root on this day has put himself even further up in the pantheon of greats, 150, taking him behind just Sachin Tendulkar on runs, behind only a select few on centuries. Special player. And yes, the conditions were there for him, but that hunger and appetite, which reflects in 13,300 runs.
And the way he was playing, I thought he'll get to Tendulkar's milestone also in this innings. It was that kind of Joe Root, and India was lucky to have him when they got him after 150, because this guy has got big double hundreds as well. And yes, so what can I say about Joe Root that hasn't already been said? So a few yardsticks for greatness. Yeah. One is, I've seen some great batters from close quarters, and when they see a bowling attack like this and pitch conditions like this, it's almost like they get 100 at will. And that was something that you saw. Another thing is, he's got such a fantastic record against Asian teams, because this is a guy who comes from north of England, but has always had this feel for, playing spinners. And just this very simple technique that he has. There was one little window when Mohammad Siraj bowled with a second new ball and bowled a superb over to Joe Root. And that is where you got a small window into his greatness, because he had sussed Siraj out and thought, he's a bowler that you can play off the front foot, stand outside the batting crease, and suddenly he was surprised by the movement that Siraj got. There was pace, there was bounce, short of leg deliveries, changed his stance, changed his whole approach. And the last ball of that over, he just left a ball outside off and said, well bowled. And that gives you an insight into Joe Root as to why he's so successful and so prolific.
This is also a good opportunity to look at Joe Root with a macro lens and look at his career. It's not that long ago, till about 2020, the questions around Joe Root were that he's a good player who doesn't convert his starts into big ones. He had 17 Test hundreds as of the start of 2021. In just the last 5 years, he's added 21.
Yeah.
What do you explains this supreme version of Joe Root that we've seen in the last few years?
Maybe just the experience of being in that place. Sometimes you need that kind of experience to know, how life is. If you're in that dark place where people are questioning your greatness. So when you come back and if you have some initial luck and start getting runs, you just value the 70s and 80s more. You want to prove people wrong. That is the hunger that drives you. And yes, when you look at just the hundreds as opposed to the volume of runs, it's quite low compared to somebody like a Jacques Kallis, who's already 45, and even Tendulkar, with 51. So these are people, who, because he's not somebody, say like a Brian Lara or even Tendulkar, prodigiously gifted, these guys tend to have tougher minds and are able to will themselves to the next level.
Yeah. 5 years ago, he was easily the lowest in terms of centuries among his peers in the Fab Four. Now he's easily on top of that chart among that quartet. The question that's on everyone's mind, will he overtake Sachin Tendulkar? To give you a yardstick or a reference, his last 2,500 runs have come in 2.5 years, and he's now 2,500 away.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous thing to do, prediction. We've seen so many examples of batters certainly tapering off. But I don't see any red flags with Joe Root where you think, this is one big weakness that he's managed to. I mean, he gets out to Bumrah outside offer, but there aren't too many Bumrahs around. Fitness-wise, he's built just right. He doesn't have a weight issue. Sometimes when you're carrying extra weight, your performance post a certain age drops considerably. Virat Kohli had a big weakness to deal with, and that actually, stunted his growth in the final few years. England play a lot of Test cricket, and I see him having a really good chance of getting there. Eventually, when he gets very close, I don't know what he will do, because we have examples of people out of respect not getting there, but he's got a serious chance of doing it, only because he's a collector of runs, and all he needs also to make his job easier are some easy tours. And there are some easy teams and bowling attacks in today's world that Tendulkar perhaps didn't have as many to cash in and reach there.
And if and when he gets there, and even if he doesn't, he'll perhaps go and say a quiet thank you to the coach and captain, because the pitches in England, his home tests, have changed drastically in the last 3 years.
Yes, and that is something that, English batters of the past didn't have. Even the greats would average about 45. Acknowledged great batters of England, 100 test matches and more, great record, but never average over 50. That could be one of the reasons.
Right. Well done, Joe Root. If I am allowed a prediction, I don't see him doing a Vian Mulder if and when he gets close to 15,921, which belonged to Sachin Tendulkar. Now, for the rest of the day, it was not one to remember for India. Where should we begin is a question I've been thinking myself. I think it's fair to start with the decision making and the tactical confusion. Washington Sundar not bowling till the 68th, sudden impact, and then you don't take the second new ball. What to you was the worst of the things that happened?
So we should start right at the beginning of day 3, where I thought India corrected a lot of their mistakes from the last evening, the day before. I thought Siraj and Bumrah gave India a very good start with 5 over spares and more for Siraj. Just bowled their heart out. There was a lot more accuracy. But then, the reality was seen. India just don't have the bowling depth. So Shubman Gill had no choice but to go to an Anshul Kamboj and then to a Shardul Thakur, and suddenly the pressure was off. And that is where Shubman Gill has shown a tendency to go to seam despite everything. That he went to Washington Sundar post 60 overs was just hard to understand. This is a guy who was just given you a reminder in the last test match, getting 4 wickets. And also when the second new ball was due, I just saw his keenness to go to the second new ball quickly, because there was Ben Stokes out there, clearly not comfortable against spin from both sides. So it's almost like he goes to spin reluctantly, and even when they deliver, he's not keen to stay with them. Quickly, I know this is a long answer, but I just want to say another thing, is that what happened with the second new ball, when he sort of stretched it and took it at 90 overs, Ben Stokes is vulnerable to Indian spin, and there was that rough for Jadeja. But you saw him go to a strategy, again, a failed strategy for a long time. And who was the one bowler who got you back in the game? Washington Sundar. And he had just bowled 11 overs then. But he said, enough, and let me go back to the long-term failed strategy. So that was hard to understand.
Now, if we look at those pieces of the pace puzzle individually, the word workload, when it's used in Indian cricket these days, is attached to Jasprit Bumrah. But this is perhaps a day where we've seen the effect of the workload on a Mohammad Siraj as well. He's bowled 130 plus overs in this series, and you felt that?
See, Siraj, who came into this series with lack of form, in Australia as well. So within his limitations, he's done the best that he could. Bowled with a lot of spirit. Even with the second new ball, that over that he bowled was brilliant. But he has his limitations. He's not a Mohammad Shami, or he's not a Jasprit Bumrah, or a Zaheer Khan for that matter. So I can understand India going to him, because India was just struggling to find fit players, and this is a guy who was fit enough to play and bowl with a lot of keenness. But there is an argument sometimes that if you have a senior tired bowler, and if he's not a champion, great bowler, might as well go with somebody who's a little fresh and willing to give you more. But that India went with Anshul Kamboj and Shardul Thakur, and you saw the effect of that.
I just want to stay on Siraj for a minute. How do we view Siraj's numbers, the absolute numbers as they are, because if you consider the last two tours, the average might not look great in comparison to some of the other pacers who he's operated alongside. But this is a bowler who does not get a break. This is a bowler who quite often has to bowl from the unfavourable end. Because if he's playing a test match with Jasprit Bumrah is deciding which end he bowls from.
Yeah.
So how much of that do you factor in when we rate Mohammad Siraj and his absolute numbers?
See, he gets a break when he's dropped. So that is the only break.
Which hasn't happened a lot.
Yeah, he didn't play the Champions Trophy and I think a few white ball matches before that. But he is built that way. He is not somebody who looks a modern day athlete like a Ben Stokes or some of the others that we see. He just looks like an athlete who knows how to bowl. So perhaps, he hasn't overthought his fitness. So he's somebody who is always keen and reasonably fit. The advantage that Bumrah gets is not favoritism from the team management. He's earned that right. And it's something that all of us, in whatever profession we are in, we have to deal with it. So if Siraj is getting that, well, that's how life is. But you just have to admire the kind of spirit that he shows and just the effort that he puts in every time.
Speaking of his senior partner, this is rare as the day when Jasprit Bumrah bowls 20 odd overs and doesn't take a wicket. Managed to get himself into the wickets column, but he barely clocked a ball over 140. What did you make of Jasprit Bumrah's day and this first innings effort?
We saw that right at the start of the series as well. Started off impressively at Headingley, first innings, bowled well. But second innings, you could see him not having the same kind of effect. The speeds go down a little bit. Then the break came in and, So very early, in his career, we have to deal with a situation where you have a genius bowler, but you have to handle him as if he's played 100 test matches. So it's unfortunate that is the situation, but it's something that people will always talk about because it's come very early into his career and it is the reality that we see today. But Bumrah, even when he's bowling at 130, is still going to be a best bowler by far, best seam bowler by far.
Is there any way back for India in this test match?
See, test cricket these days is very difficult to predict, especially when you have the kind of, track record. I mean, I've seen test cricket over the years, played a bit as well. And now what you see, test cricket is completely different. So there's no experience of that to make a prediction. But I predicted a massive lead. So maybe I'm in good form. And I could say that looks very difficult. And make another prediction. Watch out for Liam Dawson.
The batter or the bowler?
The bowler.
All right. 2 days to go. England firmly in the ascendancy. There's a bit of weather around. Will India be left relying on that in Manchester?